Alright, guys, this is my holiday picks. Now, I'm gonna be covering the Saturday games as well because I figured why not? We've got, 5 games then to predict, and it's not as short of a video. But let's get started. Starting off with the Chiefs and the Steelers. Obviously, we know that Kansas City beat the Texans last Saturday. The Steelers lost to the Ravens, making it a interesting dynamic in the AFC North. Pittsburgh is getting George Pickens back. As we all know, Joey Porter is out of this game. They've declared him out. And the Chiefs, Chris Jones' injury isn't very bad, and they expect him to play. And I do too. A guy like him just doesn't not play, to be honest, with a minor injury. Now, thinking about this game, I think that Pittsburgh matches up, pretty nicely to the Chiefs. Obviously, you got Pacheco and Hunt, their primary running backs now. But then you have Pittsburgh's front seven, and I think that they're going to play the run very well. I think it's going to be tough for the Chiefs, except for the fact that the Chiefs, they know that and they always find a way to kind of exploit these teams, and we'll really, I guess, get to see on how well the Chiefs' new aligned offensive line, works against a team that's a dominant front and doesn't have very many weaknesses. Now, the main thing that I think, will put the Chiefs apart in this game is that, you kind of shook off the rust with Hollywood Brown. Last week you got a feel for your offense, against a defense that isn't, terrible either and has a good pass rush. Patrick Mahomes was obviously more healthy than I think that most people thought he would be. So, looking at this game, it really does come down to, the play of like Russell Wilson. And obviously I just and the take that I'm gonna make with this is that even though it's in Pittsburgh, I just think the Chiefs play so well, in any environment, and they're so well coached that it's going to have to come down to whether or not Russell Wilson is able to push the ball downfield. And now you do get Pickens back, and that's been a lot of people's, excuse for Russell of why he hasn't been playing as well is because, oh, he doesn't have Pickens, which to me just shows that, like, oh, he's not, as valuable of a quarterback as everybody thinks him to be, and he hasn't revived his career. But looking at this game, I think that Kansas City is going to go in and they're going to play, the methodical style of play that they always do, where they're going to attack your weaknesses and they're going to make sure that they're able to, convert on third down and make sure to not put themselves in bad situations against this defense that is without Joey Porter, and I can just see, Patrick Mahomes carving up this, essentially the same defense that, fell to Lamar Jackson just 5 days earlier. So, or 4 days earlier, or whatever it is, so I'm taking the Chiefs in Pittsburgh, because of these obvious, reasons of why I don't think Pittsburgh is going to perform. And I guess I didn't really mention, but I think that Spagnola isn't going to just let Pickens, go downfield alongside their corners. Their scrappy corners, their corners that are, above average and great corners, in this game. So I think that, yeah, Kansas City comes away with a win here and they secure the 1 seed going into week 18. Now, moving on, we have Ravens, Texans. As we all know, Tank Dell will definitely not be back after having a dislocated knee with a torn ACL. And, it's obviously kind of, a game for Baltimore where it's like, oh, you have a quick turnaround where you can take the division, this week with a win here. Clearly they don't have as good of a conference record as Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is still the division leader here. But I think that you look at Baltimore and you look at Houston. It's obviously a game that Derrick Henry, is he played against DeMeco Ryans last year, when he was still on the Titans, twice. So he knows this team. I mean, I guess with a couple of other additions and, that sort of thing. But I just expect Henry to be able to still have a day. I expect Lamar to still have a day. I do think that Houston will do a good job of potentially containing him. But I mean, you look at the way that they played against Mahomes, and Mahomes was able to escape and even have a rushing touchdown, in Saturday's game. So, if they don't clean that up, I fully expect the Baltimore to really not mess around, and go into Houston and take a win here. I think that Houston, they're really gonna have to, figure something out because Nico Collins clearly can't be your only guy. There was sometimes that, Stroud was trying to force it to him because of lack of a better option last week, after Tank Dell's injury. And, don't get me wrong, I think that the mojo and the swagger of the Texans, albeit however small that is because they've had a rough year, just completely disappeared with the injury to Tank Dell. And so hopefully them mentally refocusing, they can make this kind of a more interesting game, against an opponent that they could potentially see in the postseason. But I'm taking Baltimore. Kind of crazy. I'm going with both away teams. I'm going with both away teams, for the Christmas matchups. And that's how I think it's gonna play out. I think that, it's gonna be tough for Mixon to get going, and they've had an atrocious run game lately either. So it just hasn't been very good for Houston's offense. Moving on to Saturday, we have the Seattle Seahawks going to go visit the Chicago Bears. As we all know, the Bears have now lost 9 straight after starting off the season 4-2. And obviously Seattle, they're coming off a, oh goodness, I can't even remember who they're coming off a loss. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I was questioning that. A game that they could have won against a very good opponent with the Vikings. They're obviously still in playoff contention behind only the Rams in their division. So this is a must win. If they lose this game, as far as I'm concerned, you can put a stake in the Seahawks. And, the Chicago Bears, last game, Caleb Williams finally, since the firing of Matt Eberflus, was able to pass for a good amount of yards. And I think that Seattle's defense, I think that their defense is, obviously pretty good. You know, they performed pretty well against the Vikings and they were able to, get the ball back, and then, a game losing interception from Geno Smith. I fully expect him to kind of correct that and that sort of thing. He's the kind of guy that he does throw a pick every once in a while, but it's been kind of bad lately. And I think that, he really just needs to, calm himself down and, play better situational football, because that interception was on first down. And it's not like, there was the game on the line. You have to make a throw or force a throw. You don't want to, but it was just overall kind of, just a bad way to end the game. I actually thought that I was like, oh, they're gonna drive on them. They were driving to get back into the game, and then they needed their defense to have a stop, and they did. But it's like it was kind of anticlimactic with the fact that like they had been driving on the Vikings defense, a defense that is, good for putting, has been good to put pressure on QBs, and maybe that just got into his head a little bit. But I do expect Seattle to win. I'm not a fool. I'm not going to bet on a nine straight loss team, like the Bears, even though they are at home. I'm going with Seattle in this one. Moving on, we have Chargers, Patriots. Oh, and excuse me, that last game was Thursday Night Football. I don't know why I said moving on to Saturday. I just realized that, you guys. So yeah, Thursday Night Football in Soldier Field. I expect Seattle to take it. My apologies. Chargers, Patriots, our first Saturday game. This is kind of the one that it's kind of like, this could be a good game. I think that New England has played well. They played pretty well against the Bills last week, not allowing them to score. I don't think that they scored 30. Yeah, they didn't score 30 for the first time in weeks. and that sort of thing. But they go up against Los Angeles, who isn't, the Chargers, who aren't, excuse me, aren't the highest scoring offense. Obviously, they're kind of a run first, control the ball. But as we all know, they haven't been the same since Dobbins has gone down. And I like their second running back. I'm trying to remember his name, but it just isn't the same. Like Dobbins was performing at a very, very high level when he was playing, and definitely worthy of being a workhorse back. But looking at the rest of the team, you got Lad McConkey finally fully healthy, and that sort of thing. And I think that Herbert's having a good year, not turning the ball over a lot, which I think, is what New England would need in order to win this game. I think that, Los Angeles is just going to prove they're a lot more efficient. I do think the styles of these offenses are somewhat similar in the sense that, like, the Patriots want to run the ball and play stout defense, and Ramondre Stevenson does a very good job of, fighting for every yard and punishing, the defense, but really I think this is going to be a big test for Drake May to see if he can keep on playing well against, good defense. As we know, the Chargers have had a very good defense this year. I am going with the Chargers over New England, though. I just think that they are the better team, and obviously they have the better record, and they have every reason to play this game to try and lock up a playoff spot. Looking at Broncos Bengals, this is obviously probably the most interesting to me of these Saturday games. We have the Bengals who have to win out. It isn't a question, that they have to win out in order to even have a chance at, getting in. And it just so happens that the Broncos are one of those teams in the way of them getting into the postseason. So it's kind of, oh, advantage Bengals, you're at home. The Broncos, coming off of a loss, last Thursday against the Chargers, a game that, looked like they should have won and nailed their ticket to the postseason, but Bo Nix has not been playing the best lately. I think, it just kind of shows the lack of talent around him. I do think Bo Nix is a he's more than a serviceable quarterback, and with a run game that is, a very small part of their offense, it does fall to Bo Nix to carry this team. And you look at their defense ended up letting up a lot of points to the Chargers, who don't even have, a crazy talented wide receiver core of with a lot of a lot of young guys that are, they look good but they're not, proven in a lot of big games. But it's like, you think about, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and I just think that our and even like Yoshi Vosh on the Bengals and that sort of thing, it just, to me it looks like it just looks like a game where, the Broncos are just going to be overpowered by Cincinnati's offense, as they are not a high scoring offense, and Cincinnati is a high scoring offense. So I'm going with Cincinnati at home to keep their playoff hopes alive going into the final week of the season. The last game we have is Cardinals visiting the Rams. The Cardinals have been eliminated from playoff contention. I'm assuming that because of their conference record and that sort of thing, that even if they win out and Seattle and the Rams, lose out, there's something there because they have been mathematically eliminated at this point. But it is a divisional game. This could be proved to be a very scrappy game. I think that, obviously Seattle is going to want the Cardinals to do them a favor, from one bird team to another. And, the Rams, they've been very, very off and on. It is at SoFi, and that sort of thing. And the Rams, The Rams are one of those teams to me that it's like, they just beat the Jets, but the Jets, as we all know, have been a team that just, isn't very good this year, but you only beat them by 10 and you were given, crazy advantages without them punting the ball. I think that Arizona is really going to give them a run for their money. I think that, Kyler Murray and Connor and, Trey McBride, with nearly eclipsing 1,000 yards for what I'm pretty sure is the first time in his career. I think that they're going to give the Rams a run for their money, and I think that, the Rams really need to figure out this offensive thing. I don't, if it's one of these things that they're saving things for the offseason and that sort of thing with McVay, it's like you are playing for this division to get in. You are not playing for a wild card spot. So it's like you roll the dice and you potentially fall behind, Seattle that I mean you did beat earlier and you play the final week of the season, but it's not a situation where I'm like, this is not the way you want to play, so I am going to say that the Rams win just because I think that they have a lot more talent offensively and they have a lot more lucrative of an offense to, put up more points. And I mean, their defense hasn't been playing, terrible football to where it's like the Cardinals are going to be able to just score at will against them. But with our final game, before, Sunday on Saturday in the holiday special, picks, I'm going with the Rams. Now, if you guys have any thoughts, opinions, I'd love for you to share with me in the comments, and I'll respond back, to you. But if you like NFL content like this, where I'm taking a realistic approach and I'm looking at these teams and injuries, to some degree, um, you can give this channel a subscribed. And as always, this is Cast, and I'm your host, Casty Streeter. And as always, go Pack Go.